Hello there, Will.
Good morning, Melissa. How are you?
I'm okay. It's been a technology morning, but I'm happy to be here with you.
It has. The technology is still waking up.
It is indeed. As are we.
Um, well, for those watching and tuning in, I wanted to ground ourselves in what our why is today. And we're really going to have just an open dialogue with you around your campaign and the viability of your campaign and really what this means. What does it mean to be a candidate? So just ask that you sit with that for a minute and I'll ask you a set of questions and we'll just be in dialogue for a bit and let voters in CD4 and throughout Oregon get to know you as a candidate better. Um, but to kick us off, I will ask the first question around what was it that led you to run for Congress in Oregon's 4th congressional district, and what made this moment of all moments feel like the right one?
Mm, I love that question. Well, I would say that there were many things that came together in order for me to run for Congress. I've always wanted to run for office. I think the first time I got asked to run for office, I might have been 23 or 24, but it wasn't the right time. And And as I was as I was listening to the 2024, I paid very close. I've voted in every election since I turned 18, right? I've always paid attention to politics. I was raised in a political family. But as I paid very special and careful attention to the election in 2024. I mean, we all were, but there was something in particular about our representation in Congress that I was particularly interested in. And um and as I was listening to our current congresswoman speak, she was talking about veterans and housing, and she just wasn't getting it right. Like she was making some assumptions about what it's like to use the VA home loan, for example, that all veterans have access to that. And I'm married to a veteran. I know that we don't all have access to that. Um, and um, I just thought, well, I should reach out to her and, you know, I never heard back. And I also thought, you know, someone should be pushing it back against Democrats in office who are not getting it right. This was actually during the time when there was the primary, the mall thing was happening, and people were really getting ramped up. And then I talked to you. About 3 weeks after that town hall. I talked to you, and I we just started talking about it, and one thing led to another, and all of a sudden we have a campaign team, and we have a campaign plan, and we have um, you and I, when we initially met the first couple of times, just completely laid out an entire plan um, for this campaign. And one of the things that you and I have both noticed is that people don't think, people in outside in political circles are making an assumption that I don't know what I'm doing. And that's part of why we decided to talk about this today, because there are some big assumptions being made about people who are primary Democrats throughout the country. I've found out it's not just about me, that we don't know what we're doing. And we do. And I think it's really important for people to understand that when we are running in Democratic primaries, we're not running in Democratic primaries because we're being mean or, we don't know what we're doing. We actually very thoroughly have thought this out because the way we have a strong democracy is to push back against the democracy in a way that creates a larger dialogue about who is representing us, especially at the federal level right now.
Right. That's a thank you for sharing that and just around your why and the purpose. I think I want to drill down just and explore that just a little more. Um, right, because if we think about our democracy and we think about the freedom in
Hmm.
which everyday people or have the opportunity to run for office at any level. Um, how does that sit with you when our democracy is saying anyone can run, but the system is saying actually not really,
Right. I think that I think that one of the biggest surprises to, and I've worked in politics for like my entire adult life. I've worked in
right?
politics as an
Right.
advocate and a lobbyist, and like as someone who was creating policy and law at a local and national level. Like I have the experience working in in our lawmaking processes and in politics. And what has been really surprising is how we have bought into an idea of the professional politician, that the only capable politicians, and I see this very much in the Democratic Party in particular, that the only good politicians are the ones that have been in politics for a long time. That somehow that gives you the experience that you need to be able to hold a higher office. But what I know to be true is that those of us that are being deeply impacted by the decisions being made at the federal level are also just as equally capable of holding public office in Congress. And I think we need to demystify this idea that that only professional politicians are capable of doing this job because they aren't. You know, um I look at people, particularly as I'm noticing just regular everyday people running in the Republican Party. And they don't have a, no one's asking them, what's your political background? But for some reason, for Democrats in particular, we've bought into this idea that as a business owner, as a social worker, as a working mom, as someone who's married to a disabled veteran, as someone who has lived a life experience as a Native woman, and like I have all these identities that have actually made me very uniquely suited to being in Congress because of all of the life experience that I've had. And if people would just sit down and talk to me about that, they know that. In fact, I know this because I'm talking to hundreds of voters, you know, thousands of voters so far, hundreds of voters a week. And that culmination of conversation is they're like, "Oh, wow, you really know what you're doing." But the system has made an assumption that I don't.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for exploring that with me a little bit. I think that that is problematic of so many other symptoms that are cyclical in nature and interconnected, which elevates the importance of you, right? Like your candidacy and why you're different than your professional politician, right? And I would venture to argue that many of our politicians are not professional, but I digress. Uh, I'm gonna jump us a little ahead in because I feel like this next question is nestled nicely in this you know viability conversation is what we've really been having. So people talk about viability like it's just money and just numbers, right? But what does viability actually mean to you in praxis to this campaign?
Oh, I really like this question. Here's what I want the average human being to understand about what a candidate who's running for Congress in particular faces in regards to this idea of viability. So, we have created in the United States a notion and an idea that viability stems from the amount, especially since Citizens United, the amount in millions of dollars that you can raise to run a campaign. And I understand I need to raise hundreds of thousands, if not $1 million. Like I understand that it takes money to run for Congress. And also, I remember, you know, back in 2008 when Obama was running for president, I remember the $10 donation making all the difference in the world because it all added up, right? And what I think is really important for people to understand is that I am a very viable candidate. I'm calling voters. I'm out in community. I'm connecting with human beings. I am hearing how frustrated they are with our current representation. I'm also hearing how they don't feel like our current representation is in community with them, doesn't hear them, doesn't respond to them, doesn't see them, doesn't understand the issues that we're facing. You know, we are facing enormous economic issues as regular everyday people. That in and of itself makes me a viable candidate, not to mention the fact that I have a incredibly talented campaign team. You know, we have culminated decades of political experience, between my co-campaign managers, you and Bree, with Ian as a field organizer, our field manager, and with me as the candidate, we combined have literally decades and decades of political experience. And our fundraising has been on par with other people who are running in Democratic primaries throughout Oregon. And we need more, right? We need, I keep I keep saying if all the people who are following me online would give me $10 a month for the next 5 months, we'd be sitting pretty, right? It's just a culmination of numbers. So yes, we need to get money out of politics. Yes, we need to overturn Citizens United. Yes, we need term limits. And I used to say all the time when I was working and fundraising for Planned Parenthood Action Fund in Utah, if we can choose to play checkers or we can choose to play chess. And I would rather play chess. I would rather strategically use the money that our donors are giving us in a robust field campaign where I am able to connect with the voters. And if it's not me that's connecting with the voters, it's our team that's connecting with voters. Because this campaign is about building a better life for all of us in community and relationship with each other, because that is how we are going to help each other get through what we are facing as a nation.
I feel like that was a mic drop of why you're running for Congress. But I'll continue on and hold the mic. Um, I want to stay on this theme of viability and kind of shift and think of the pie slightly different, Melissa. And I'm curious that as you've been in relationship and building reciprocity with those in CD4 and throughout Oregon, which arguably I think you've done a pretty damn well good job. Um, what have voters across CD4 taught you that no poll or data set would ever teach you?
The number one thing, the first thing that pops into my head is that I am not alone in my experience with my family. So, my husband's job was rescinded by order of the president um, last January. He was hired under veterans preference to do the job he had been working towards for 8 years. And I have talked to numerous people who were either furloughed or doged, or when the shutdown was happening, they were experiencing extreme financial distress. I've talked to so many people who are on Medicaid, who are worried about their kids' school lunches being cut with the SNAP benefits being cut like they are. I've talked to farmers who are really having a hard time with the cuts that are being made at the USDA. I am realizing that the experiences that we are having, we're not alone. And so there is something about that I'm hearing from voters. One of the other big, huge things that I've learned from voters is that they don't feel seen. They don't feel listened to, and they feel like they're sending emails and telling our elected officials about what's happening in their lives, but they don't see that any proactive measures are being done to help them. And so one of the things I have realized is that, as I'm asking voters, what are the main issues that are the most important to you? They are saying nobody's ever asked me that question. And what it's making me realize, not just as a candidate, but as a future congresswoman, is we make policy based on assumptions about what people need instead of pushing for policies based on what we know people need. And I think, when you see good public policy move through, it impacts people in a really positive way. It impacts the greater whole. It takes care of people and creates community. And when we stop assuming what people need and start asking what people need, it changes the way we talk about it, even at the congressional level on the floor. And and I think that we need people in Congress who understand how to talk about these issues in a way that it gets on the record. I've seen this a lot recently, in particular, with the way that some Democratic leaders are really pushing back against the administration. It actually is giving me hope that people are asking the questions and also bringing their constituents' issues to the forefront, which is something that we haven't seen.
Right. Well, I think that the underlying difference there too, and sort of the theme that I was hearing as you were talking, was that politically, not everyone's at the table currently.
No.
And the table you're building actively in CD4 and throughout Oregon has enough room for everyone closest to the problem because they're closest to the solution.
Mhm.
And that fundamentally turns politics on its head when people who are most impacted by the policies are shaping the decisions and the solutions of those outcomes. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's been really interesting because one of the folks that's part of our media and communication strategy team was sent me an article that was published in the Atlantic about 10 years ago, and they did an analysis of all of Congress over like a decade. And I had the numbers wrong when I did another interview because I hadn't had the article. I was getting a little bit of misinformation, but it wasn't that off. At first we thought it was a 20-year study, but it was only 10. But what they found was that only 13 members of Congress over that entire 10-year period had ever experienced poverty.
Wow.
So here we have this group of humans who are making decisions about our communities, the people in our communities, as the wage gap gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and as the gap between the millionaires and the billionaires and those of us who are just working families gets bigger and bigger and bigger. You have people making policy decisions who have not worked in this economy to pay the bills.
Right. Which is problematic in and of itself.
Problematic.
Yeah. Ooh. Um, I'm gonna keep on this
Yeah,
theme,
yeah.
but I'm curious to hear if there's been a moment in the on the campaign trail so far that has genuinely shifted how you see this campaign and even the future of politics.
Hmm. There's been a really there's these really great moments, especially as I've visited with people on the coast and been in communities like Coos Bay and Newport and talked to people where there is an amount of shock that I'm genuinely interested in what's happening in those communities. That my husband works in Newport, so Newport is particularly important to me. But I'm just there being with people in community. I went to a housing um meeting, an all-day housing meeting in Coos Bay and talked to people and listened to people talk and can, ask questions and was curious about what was happening in their community. So I think like the biggest, most incredible thing that's happened as I've been traveling the district is that people are genuinely grateful that someone is asking them about their lives, that someone is asking them about their small businesses, that someone is talking to them about unions and organizing and what's happening at the community colleges. Like being in community is just how I operate in the world. So even when I'm in DC, the representatives of our office will still be in community because we are building community. And that has been, it's consistent across the board, the joy that people are experiencing from someone
Yeah.
asking them very basic questions about their lives, which has been really incredible. Like it really affirms for me that that this is the moment for me to be running for Congress. One of the things that has been really painful is that as I am getting all these messages from our constituents about how they want something new and different, that they want representation of the people, by the people, for the people, that they are really excited about this campaign and the momentum that it is building, the political elite and the machine, not just the Democratic Party, but across the board, is really engaging in making this much more difficult for people like me to run for office.
Hmm.
And that has been very painful because the average voter wants to know why they don't have inspiring people to vote for.
Right.
And it is because I I don't even think gatekeeping is the right word. It is because of the fear that if we actually do something different, somehow we will lose something. And yet the people are crying out for someone like them to represent them.
Right.
And I think that disconnect between parties and politics and endorsements and like all this stuff you quote unquote have to do to win is it actually flies in the face of what voters on the ground want. You
Right.
know, we have to get over 50,000 votes to win this election, right? And those 50,000 people that I'm hoping are going to vote for me, they don't want the machine. They want to know that when they send an email to their congresswoman, it's going to get answered,
Right.
even if the answer is, I can't do anything about that, but let me help you figure out how we can, right? And so it's really been like I love this campaign. People are like, "Oh my God, you're running for Congress? It must be so horrible." And I'm like, "No, I'm having the best time of my life. I'm having so much fun. So much fun talking to people and meeting people and raising money and doing all these things we've been doing." But I will tell you the hardest part of this campaign is being told we need more women of color. We need more women. We need more LGBT folks. We need more working families. We need more small business owners. We need more people who care about the environment and the planet. We need more people who blah, 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 blah. But not you.
I'm going to pause us there. And because this next question's perfect, perfectly teed up, and you did that wonderfully. Thank you. How do you respond to the idea that challengers should wait their turn?
What are we waiting for? We are in the middle of a constitutional crisis in this country. We have a president who is mocking the fact that we are talking about the word affordability because he doesn't even know what it would be like to go to the grocery store to buy groceries right now, to not get your car registered for 6 months because you can't afford it, right? But you still have to drive to work. So you're taking the risk. He would not, we have leadership at the federal level that are making decisions about our everyday lives that do not know what it looks like to be running a small business without the support of the Small Business Administration or any of the other programs that help us get through the lower times in our businesses, right? We are there's no time to wait our turn. If I was waiting for my turn, I'd be waiting forever. If I waited for my turn, I never would have wrote the first bill I ever wrote. When I wrote the Emancipation of a Minor bill to help homeless youth get emancipated so that they could get services and housing, I was told over and over again, you're never going to pull this off. This will never happen. And I was like, Well, we've got kids freezing in the street, so that's not acceptable to me. I'm not waiting for you to tell me when the right time is to help our kids get off the street. I'm not waiting. And I'm certainly not going to wait to run for Congress in the middle of a constitutional crisis where our leaders are out of touch with what regular community members are experiencing in CD4.
Couldn't have said it better myself. I think that I think it's unacceptable to be told to wait your turn, particularly in this system that says anyone can run at any time.
Yeah.
I'll leave it there. Yeah, two more questions before we close out. Excuse me. What keeps you grounded when the pressure and noise of the campaign ramp up?
Well, I will say the first thing that keeps me grounded is my team. So I think we have built a really powerful, beautiful, incredible, amazing team of people where I am able to go to all of you and say, I can't believe this just happened. Please help me. Like, please walk me through the stress of running for Congress on a day to day, sometimes hour to hour, sometimes minute to minute basis. My faith keeps me grounded. My ability to not just engage um, with my native ritual, but also my faith at church. You know, as I have made it a priority to continue. I'm an Episcopal. I continue to go to church, and I even am continuing to preach because I'm a lay preacher with the church, and that helps to ground me. Um, you know, and just continuing to check back in with my kids and my family and say, "Are you still okay with all this?" And they're like, "Yeah, mom, go." I'm like, "Will you put the sticker on the water bottle?" And they're like, "No, mom, we won't, but go." Like, like my family grounds me, my friends ground me, you know, but most importantly, it is the random messages from people that say, "You popped up in my feed. I can't believe you're running. I'm so excited. How do I help? What do you need from me? How can I help you?" And so it's again, it's that building of community. So it's not just one thing that's keeping me grounded throughout this campaign. It is the entirety of this community that we are building that I can see how it is leading me down this path.
That's so beautiful. That's so beautiful. You know that I think that leads us nicely into this last question for viewers. For someone who's watching who feels disconnected from politics, what would you want them to know?
That what we are experiencing right now can be really intimidating. And we still have the ability to engage in the electoral process for now. And until and if they take that away, um, we have the ability to ask questions of the people who are running for office so that we can understand them better. And they don't have to be so intimidating. When I used to do citizen lobbyist trainings and I used to teach people how that they could engage in advocacy with their elected officials, I used to remind them that elected officials put their pants on one leg at a time. We're just people. We're just human beings mucking about in this world, totally fallible, but we should be asking questions of the people who are running for office. Why are you making this decision? Why are you doing this? Why did you decide to vote this way? What was your reasoning behind that? And then remember that we are just people. Like we put politicians at this level like they're inaccessible. And I think the machine of politics has created that. But when you remember that the people who hold elected office put their pants on one leg at a time, just like you do, we become human beings.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Beautiful way to close out this session of our Q&A with Dr. Melissa Bird, who is running for Congress in Oregon's 4th congressional district as a Democrat. For those viewing and want to learn more about Melissa's campaign, you can visit melissabirdforcongress.com. Sign up for information, make a donation, learn about priorities, meet the campaign team. But just follow us and engage. This is not a cookie cutter campaign. This is a robust and intentional indigenous led campaign for the future of Oregon's 4th congressional district and Oregonians as a whole. And really, in the ecosystem nationwide as a whole, right? This is a fight for the soul of America, like we've talked about before. But um, just honored to be with you today, Melissa. And thank you for fighting the good fight and causing good trouble.
Oh, thank you so much, Will. And I will add, don't forget, the primary is on May 19th, so it is 5.5 months away.
Go time.
Oh, thanks, Will. I had a great time talking to you today. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Okay.
Bye.